Everybody knows Warren Buffett, right? The Oracle of Omaha. But what if I told you his entire legendary investment philosophy, the one that built a multi-billion-dollar empire, was totally flipped on its head by one single deal? Yeah, let's dive into this amazing story of how even a genius had to completely relearn how to think. It all really comes down to this man, Charlie Munger. After Munger passed away, Buffett gave him this incredible title, the architect of Berkshire Hathaway. He said he himself was just the general contractor carrying out the plans. So, how in the world did this architect completely redesign the master's blueprint? Well, to get that, we've got to go back to the very beginning. See, before Munger, there was another giant in Buffett's life, his professor, his mentor, Benjamin Graham. We're talking about the father of value investing. Graham wrote the book that Buffett still says changed his life, and he taught him one central, really powerful idea. And that idea was intrinsic value. Graham's whole method was actually pretty simple. Figure out what a business is truly worth based on its assets, and then, and this is the key part, buy it for less than that. Now, this was a revolutionary idea back then, because most people were just gambling on which way a stock price would wiggle. Graham's approach? Pure at numbers. He looked at stocks not as companies, but as tickers you could buy on the. And Buffett was a true disciple. I mean, he was so obsessed with learning from Graham that he once took a train down to Washington, D.C., found the headquarters of Graham's company, Geico, and literally banged on the locked doors on a Saturday morning until a janitor finally let him in. That turned into a 4-hour meeting. Talk about dedication, right? But, even way back then, you could see these little cracks in the foundation. Graham, he could not have cared less who ran a company. All he cared about were the numbers on the page. Buffett, on the other hand, he was fascinated by why a company was good. The management, what gave it an edge over the competition. This was the seed of a whole different philosophy, and, well, Charlie Munger was about to make it grow. And here he is, enter Charlie Munger. When Buffett and Munger met back in 1959, they hit it off instantly. But here's the thing, Munger was not a strict Graham disciple. Not at all. He had a revolutionary idea that was going to challenge everything Buffett thought he knew about investing. Munger just laid it out for him, plain and simple. He basically told Warren, stop buying these cheap, mediocre businesses. He called it buying fair businesses at wonderful prices. The real money, Munger argued, the real genius, was in buying great companies, wonderful businesses, even if you had to pay a little more for them. So you've got this tug of war, right? On one side, you have Graham's doctrine, find a bargain no matter the quality. On the other side, you have Munger's idea, find quality even if it's not a crazy bargain. For years, Buffett was kind of stuck between these two worldviews. And then the perfect test case came along. And it came in a box of chocolates. So in 1971, this top-tier candy shop out on the West Coast called See's Candies came up for sale. It was a beloved brand, loyal customers, a truly wonderful business. But there was one huge problem, at least for a student of Ben Graham. The asking price was $30 million. Now, to Buffett, this was just outrageous. It was 3 times the company's book value. According to the strict rules of Ben Graham, this was way, way too expensive. His mentor would have walked away without a second thought. But Munger just kept pushing. He argued that the brand's loyal customers and its power to raise prices, those were huge assets that don't show up on a balance sheet. And somehow, he finally convinced Buffett to make an offer. Buffett came back with $25 million, and the sellers took it. I want you to understand, this wasn't just another deal. This was a philosophical earthquake. It was, as Munger later said, the first time Berkshire paid for quality. The architect's blueprint was officially being used, and the results? Oh, they were absolutely staggering. Over the next couple of decades, that $25 million investment in See's Candies generated over $1.9 billion in pre-tax earnings for Berkshire Hathaway. Buffett had learned Munger's lesson in the most profitable way you could possibly imagine. So yeah, that See's Candies deal, it changed everything. Buffett now had a brand new playbook, and he was about to use it to build one of the most successful companies in the history of the world. This new philosophy of buying and holding great companies was like pouring gasoline on a fire he already understood. The power of compounding. Just look at the growth of his early partnerships on this timeline. That kind of explosive momentum, now combined with holding great companies for the long haul, created a financial juggernaut. And these are the legendary companies that really define the modern Berkshire Hathaway.
Think about Coca-Cola. It wasn't cheap when he bought it, but its global brand, its durable competitive advantage, that made it a wonderful business worth paying a fair price for. This portfolio of absolute icons simply wouldn't exist without Charlie Munger's influence.
So, after this whole half-century evolution, what can we really learn from the Oracle's journey? Well, his evolved philosophy can pretty much be boiled down into a few core, super powerful lessons. So what does this new blueprint look like in practice? Okay, here are the 4 criteria Buffett uses now, and you can see how it perfectly blends Graham's discipline with Munger's wisdom. He still wants an attractive price, that's step 4, but that's only after he understands the business, sees a long-term competitive advantage, what he famously calls a moat, and trusts the people running the show.
And of course, there's his most famous piece of advice, the one you've probably heard a million times. This really sums up his contrarian mindset. When the market is panicking and everyone is selling, that's when those wonderful businesses might just become available at a fair price. He doesn't see a downturn as a crisis, he sees it as an opportunity.
But you know what I think is maybe the most amazing thing about him? His honesty about his failures. He openly talks about his huge mistakes, like buying Dexter shoes right before its competitive advantage completely evaporated, or just totally missing the vote on Google. It shows that the core of his philosophy isn't some rigid set of rules, it's a commitment to always be learning, always be adapting. And what's the end game? What does he do with all the money from all this learning? He gives it away. He calls his stock certificates claim checks on society's resources, and he has pledged that more than 99% of his claim checks will be returned to society through philanthropy. It's just a truly remarkable commitment. Which brings us to one last thought. Buffett always says investing shouldn't be like Olympic diving, where you get extra points for difficulty. He looks for 1-foot bars to step over. It's this beautiful lesson in just focusing on simplicity and what you can easily achieve. So I'll leave you with this question. What's the obvious, simple 1-foot bar right in front of you?